Tonight on KQED Newsroom, Election Day is coming right up. We speak with California's Secretary of State, Shirley Weber, about new laws protecting poll workers. Plus, grab your ballot. Our political team shares the latest on the candidates and issues vying for your vote. And we meander through gorgeous West Marin in this week's look at something beautiful. Coming to you from KQED headquarters in San Francisco, this Friday, November 4th, 2022. Hello and welcome. This is KQED Newsroom, and I'm Priya David Clemens. Election Day is right around the corner. Ballots must be dropped off in person or be postmarked in the mail by November 8th. The person in charge of running California's elections is the Secretary of State. And that is Shirley Weber in California.
Hi, Shirley Weber.
She was appointed to the seat by Governor Newsom in January 2021. The move came when Alex Padilla vacated the office to take Vice President Kamala Harris's position. He became an appointed senator. This year, Secretary Weber is on the ballot in her first campaign for the position. She's running against Republican candidate Robert Bernowski. And she joins us today to offer insights on how the state has prepared for this election and what we can expect to see in the days ahead. Secretary Weber, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation. It's good to be here.
There has been a critical loss of faith in the system of elections in America, with attacks from Republicans growing daily. And many Republican candidates have said they won't accept the results unless they win. What are you doing to build faith in our voting system for both parties?
Well, you know, it's interesting that people are saying that. And I think we're all working very hard to make sure that whatever we do in terms of this election, particularly in California, that we provide tremendous opportunities for people to vote in their homes, to vote in various places. We've done a lot of things to just create an opportunity to vote for so many individuals, to make it comfortable for wherever they are. We spend a lot of time explaining to people what the process is like. We invite people into our registrar of voter offices so they can come and see what people are doing and even observe how the ballots are being counted. It's always amazing to me that despite all of that and all the efforts that go into it, we still have a group of people who say, if I don't win, it could not have been fair. I guess how crazy can you be? I mean, the bottom line is all of us have been in things before that we did not win, whether it was a job, whether it was some athletic event, whether it's some academic event that we weren't the top person. And yet we did not complain that it wasn't fair to us, because if we competed fairly, people have a right to choose who they want in an elected position. And simply because you didn't win doesn't mean the system is flawed. People make choices.
Secretary Weber, you are obviously dismissive of this concern about whether or not people actually believe in the validity of the vote, right? You say these are valid votes and people should believe in them. But are you concerned about the lack of faith and the loss of faith within our system?
Oh, we are definitely that. I mean, every day we're meeting with individuals, we're registering people to vote, we're answering questions, we're inviting people to come in, and those who really want the answers get the answers about what's happening at their local place. There are those who we interact with and show them everything there is to show, and they still say, I don't believe. Okay, I don't believe it because my candidate didn't win. And so, but that doesn't mean we dismiss it. We answer every question that's there, every allegation. We want to make sure that people know that there's an answer to the questions that they're posing, and we do all we can to try to make the system work for each and every person. I just got off a call where a woman said she had problems getting something done online, and it was interesting because in her conversation, it took her about 10 minutes to call our hotline and get the information, the process that she needed in LA to be able to cast her ballot. So we address every issue, every concern is there.
And tell us about. Well, I just want to move on to tell us about the concerns for the safety of poll workers, because we have heard about harassment in other places, and there are some new laws in effect in California.
Yes, we have heard about that, and we've seen some overzealous individuals who want to take over the process and say they're going to do the counting, all those kinds of things. We've been very firm about that. We are protecting our poll workers. We're protecting the process, and we will. And people cannot just come in and take charge of registrar voter offices. They cannot violate the law. They cannot assault people. And so we made very clear in no uncertain terms with our poll workers, with our registrar voters, we will not tolerate any of this kind of activity. Our AG's office has put out a list of things that says, listen, you got to abide by these rules and regulations that govern elections. Otherwise, you will be prosecuted. We've also offered them what we call our Safe at Home program. That's normally for persons who are being abused in a domestic violence situation. If a poll worker believes that somehow or another they're being threatened because they live in sometimes in small communities and people attack them for the results of the election, which is almost insane, we then do provide support for those individuals, protection of their information so that people cannot just get to them, and we will protect them. And so, we made it very clear with our office and the Attorney General's office that we're not going to have people working in our polls who are being intimidated.
Okay. And we have also seen that we are going to be having more people voting by mail because it is now mandated in California. Anything else you want to tell us about how California is making it easier for people to vote?
Well, when you look at all the choices that are there, over the years, I've heard people tell me all the reasons why they couldn't vote. They couldn't get to the polls on time. They had a babysitter problem. They had this, they had that. We now give everyone a ballot, and you have in most counties up to 10 days to vote. You can mail it in. You can bring it in to the Registrar of Voters office. We have ballot boxes throughout the state that are really heavy duty, sturdy boxes that are often in our libraries and our centers. We also have vote centers that are open. And so, in fact, beginning this weekend, there will be around-the-clock opportunities for individuals to vote either by mail, but also that we will have vote centers open in the various areas. I think in San Diego, we will increase them from 30 to like 200 places for people to vote.
That's a big difference. Secretary Weber, we have to leave it there, but thank you for your time with us today.
Well, you're welcome, and we hope everyone will take advantage of this unique opportunity in California to vote because there's so many days and so many ways that people can vote.
Thank you, Secretary Weber.
Mm-hmm.
Let's turn now to the candidates and propositions. At the top of the ballot, Governor Gavin Newsom is polling ahead of his Republican challenger, Brian Dahle. After Newsom easily beat back the attempt to recall him from office last fall, pundits have been expecting him to win his second term as governor. Proposition 1, which would add reproductive rights to California's state constitution, is also popular, despite opposition from faith-based groups and churches. So where are the bigger battles showing up this election? Let's ask the experts. We're joined now by part of our KQED politics and government team, correspondent Marisa Lagos and reporter Joe Fitzgerald Rodriguez. Thank you both for being here.
Hey, Priya.
Hey-o.
So the top issue for Californians, certainly the economy, beyond doubt. A recent poll has 76% of California voters rating the nation's economy as either not good or poor. Another 40% say their own finances are worse off than a year ago. And this week, we've seen significant tech company layoffs. Twitter, Stripe, Lyft, plus the Federal Reserve raising interest rates once again this week. No sign that's slowing down. Marisa, how are all of these economic concerns playing out in the campaigns?
Well, they're basically the issue that Republicans are really sort of honing in on, especially in some of these tight congressional races that could help decide the balance of Congress. And it's interesting, you said, compared to a year ago, I think that's exactly the metric we need to use. Coming into 2022, it seemed like crime was at the top of mind for voters, but that was before these huge inflation hits, the stock market kind of tanking, starting in the spring. And I think actually, you can see how that's changed with how things sort of developed with the Twitter sale of Elon Musk, right? When he first asked about that, it looked like a good deal at $44 billion. Now it's gone off the rails. And I think that, what you see is people really feeling this in their pocketbooks, gas prices, inflation at the grocery store. These are things that we see Republican candidates just really hammering Democrats on.
Leaning into hard.
Absolutely.
Okay. Joe, what else is out there? The economy is certainly top of mind. We mentioned abortion earlier, but has that sort of peaked early? Are voters, across the country and here in California really leaning in on abortion?
Yeah, it's funny because both Republicans want crime to be top of mind. That's maybe less so now. Democrats certainly want abortion to be top of mind. That's still remaining there a bit. But one thing I point out is that, when we had the Newsom and Dahle here, and Marisa and Scott were talking to them
for the debate,
the
one and
only debate.
Point that out.
We took audience questions, and though those things have been really driving the news, I saw a lot of people talking about homelessness, asking about homelessness, wanting to know what's going to happen about that. And we've, of course, seen big news with that, with Newsom putting a stop to that funding, state funding towards homelessness in cities.
He said just yesterday, is that right, on Thursday, $1 billion of funding that's supposed to go to various cities and local organizations to try to curb homelessness, to support organizations that are helping the homeless and unhoused. He's saying that money is not going to go out. That's a big deal.
Right. And that he's saying that cities weren't doing enough, that their plans weren't grand enough, that he needs to convene everyone to really discuss it. But some of the cities, including San Francisco, are saying, well, hey, that's jeopardizing a lot of programs we have. That's jeopardizing some housing.
How much of that is politics?
Yeah, I was going to say,
this
is coming a few days before the election. As Joe mentioned, homelessness in California, which I think ties into the economy, absolutely, right? And, questions about the cost of housing more broadly. So I think that it's probably not coincidental that Newsom made this pronouncement just a few days before an election where, as you mentioned, he's leading the Republican quite significantly, but he would sure love to make that an even bigger margin on election day.
Look, I'll say also he has been paying attention to this issue. He has said to San Francisco, we're going to investigate the housing policies that you have here, and we're not going to just do business as it has been done. Because we're all seeing the effects.
Sometimes it's not the pronouncement, but the timing of the pronouncements that's political, right?
That's right. Okay, so let's turn to some specific races now. Let's start across the bay from San Francisco here in Oakland, where 10 candidates are vying to be mayor. Marisa, you've been following this. Tell us about the top candidates and the pitch they're making to voters.
Yeah, so I would say Lauren Taylor, who's a first-term council member, has really sort of racked up the big name endorsements, including current mayor Libby Schaaf. And he's actually created a sort of alliance, since it is a ranked choice voting system and people do get several choices, with another first-term council member, Trevor Reed. But Taylor and Sheng Tao are really seen as sort of the top-tier candidates, another council member. Sort of interesting, I think, to watch from afar is Ignacio de la Fuente, former council member, pretty well known in Oakland, has staged a bit of a comeback in recent days, and he's been helped by more than $500,000 in independent expenditures, much of it from a hedge fund manager and developer that support this controversial coal export terminal in Oakland. This has been a major flashpoint in Oakland politics. It's something Libby Schaaf, the current mayor, and the council all oppose. You also have civil rights attorney Alyssa Victoria Villanueva. She got tossed off the ballot and then put back on. I think this is one of those ones where ranked choice voting is really going to matter because you have so many candidates and because, from a sort of policy point of view, they're not necessarily all that wildly different, as usual in Bay Area politics, right? You have a bunch of Democrats running against one another, but it will be one to watch, and I would expect that it'll take a few days to count those votes given the number of people on the ballot.
Okay. And it's interesting, Oakland is also going from having 3 people that you can rank for who you'd like as your top choices to 5. So there's a lot to try to figure out
voters
here.
Even more, I think, because we already get so many questions. And we should say we have some resources on our website at kqed.org to explain ranked choice voting and kind of how to approach it if you're a little confused as a voter.
All right. Joe, Oakland sits in Alameda County, where there is an historic district attorney's race going on. Both candidates are black, so whoever wins, it'll be the first time we have an African-American district attorney in Alameda County.
Absolutely, and it especially matters in a county where cities have seen their struggles with police, officer-involved shootings, receiving a lot of attention there. Nancy O'Malley, in office from 2009, and announced and would not be running in this most recent election. But Terry Wiley, one of these candidates, is kind of seen as maybe a continuation of her policies. He's been in that office for 33 years. His opponent, Pamela Price, a lot more what you would say is a traditional kind of progressive, doesn't want to see cash bail continue, wants to try minors as minors in all cases. And while they both may, have these expressions of progressive bona fides, Pam Price is certainly closer to something you would say like more of a Chesa figure from San Francisco to make a relation there. The one thing that really I think is dividing them is like when you get nitty gritty into their policies is like, for instance, both are against capital punishment, but Pam Price says, well, I want to get the people who are on death row who are from Alameda County off death row. Both say they're against violence. Pam Price says, oh, well, I want to go into the communities and reach out to youth. I want to get the guns off the street, go after the ghost gun manufacturers, whereas Terry Wiley is saying, well, we have to go after these gang members. There's 2,000 people who are responsible for the most violent crime in Alameda County, and those are the ones that we need to target. That has got him in a little hot water with a lot of labor groups who say that even though Terry Wiley is black, they were criticizing him as using kind of a generalization that might have been seen as a little too broad. So there's definitely a lot down in the nitty-gritty that separates these two.
And is there sort of a philosophical difference that we're seeing here? There's really been this pushback against progressive policies in the district attorney's office if you're looking at the Chesa Boudin narrative. Do you feel like that is playing out in some ways here in Alameda County as well?
Yeah, but what I think is really interesting is that even though Pam Price lost her 2018 bid, for DA, that might have actually, I don't know, maybe I'm overanalyzing here, but that might have actually helped her because this kind of anti-progressive DA swell that came and went and came after George Gascon in Southern California and came after Chesa Boudin here didn't hit her. And now are we past it? If she gets to become a progressive DA in that position, will she have avoided that kind of recall season? That may be an issue at play here as well.
Interesting. There's also a very interesting race for San Jose mayor where Mahan and Chavez are going at it, and that has been really
another
heated.
Sort of business versus labor. Cindy Chavez has gotten a lot of labor support. They're both on the city council. Matt Mahan has supported more by the business community, and the current mayor Sam Liccardo. So kind of those. I mean, it's this very typical thing we've seen in recent years when you have these deep blue places, whether it's the state legislature or these cities, you kind of have this moderate versus progressive thing that develops, and it often comes down on this like labor business kind of back and forth.
And a lot of money in that one too, $8.5 million. The most for
if you're in the
San
South
Jose
Bay, you are
race.
hearing about that race for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's come back here to San Francisco where there is a district attorney race. Brooke Jenkins is running for her seat. She was appointed to that, of course, after Chesa Boudin was recalled from office just a few months ago. Mayor London Breed appointed her. Joe, tell us about who the candidates are in this field. And does she have real competition?
That's debatable. In some of the polls that we've seen, the competition really hasn't been too close to her in terms of favorables. So we've got Maurice Chenier, John Hamasaki, we've got Brooke Jenkins herself, and Joe Alioto Veronese, who, if you know the Alioto name, grandson of former San Francisco Mayor Joe Alioto and the son of Angela Alioto, former San Francisco Board of Supervisors.
Well-known San Francisco name. Yeah.
They're quite well known indeed.
Yeah.
And Alioto's in the wharf. Where we kind of are ideologically with the three main kind of front runners, right, with Jenkins, Hamasaki, and Alioto. Jenkins is pushing a little to the right of where Chesa Boudin is, who was recalled earlier this year. She wants to try some minors as adults. She has been pushing away from diversion programs that Chesa was relying on so much for drug dealers in particular as well, and offering a bit of a firmer kind of a carrot and a stick method of bundling citations against drug users to try to compel them into health programs. And John Hamasaki is definitely to the left of her. He's definitely wants to continue some of Chase's particular programs. He definitely is a harsh critic of Jenkins. I would say he was in front of me for an hour. I asked him about a lot of his policies, and a good 50 minutes of that hour was spent critiquing Jenkins rather than talking what he would do.
Because they see her as
progressives,
the right?
And also Hamasaki, civil rights attorney, Pamela Price, civil rights attorney, Chesa Boudin, former public defender. It's one thing to have these views, but to get into office and actually sort of lead in a way that I think can coalesce folks behind you is a challenge, and I don't know that Hamasaki has made that case in this very short time period.
All right, well, let's turn to another major issue, housing in the state. We talked about this a little bit earlier. There are some measures, some propositions out there, local measures on this. So there's a measure to cap rental prices in Richmond, Measure P, and then here in San Francisco, there are also a pair of measures on the ballot. So Marisa, why don't you start us off here?
Yeah, I mean, these all really sort of play into the sort of perennial fights expensive for housing. You mentioned Richmond, that's over, rent control and sort of lowering the amount of increases that landlords can implement. You got concern there, of course, from people who own buildings, and you mentioned, mortgage rates earlier. I think that there is a lot of tension right now between wanting to keep people housed and making sure that people don't default on their loans, things like that. Here in San Francisco, Props D and E are a very sort of typical moderate versus progressive fight over housing. More moderates put D on the ballot, including the mayor, former supervisor Scott Wiener, state senator. This seeks to sort of cut red tape, they would say, make it easier to build all sorts of housing. Prop E by progressives would essentially say that, no, it's going to be easier to build affordable housing. I think the question on that one is, will there be enough money for developers to actually do that?
Yeah. Okay. Before we leave San Francisco and go to the congressional races, I do want to get to that quickly. But Joe, I'd love to hear an update on how Paul Pelosi is doing and what is happening in that investigation.
Sure. I've been out there since day one and was even there Monday when David DePape, who allegedly attacked Paul Pelosi with a hammer in his home, made his first appearance in court. Since then, Paul Pelosi has been released from San Francisco General Hospital. He's recovering at home with his doctor. House Speaker Pelosi released a statement, thanking General Hospital for all their good work. And just this morning, and this comes from reporter Laura Clivens, David DePape had 2 new court dates set. Those will be in November and December, and we may see, big open question, will we see the body camera footage? That's something a lot of people have been calling for, something we're wondering, so we can actually see what happened for ourselves.
All right. Well, a lot of vitriol out there, not only in this particular case where it seems like there was definitely a political motivation behind this, as the attacker seems to have been looking for Nancy Pelosi, but also we're hearing that nationally as well, that it's one of the most toxic elections that has ever been in terms of how people are speaking to each other and about what's happening.
Capitol Police are asking for more support in order to protect politicians and their families because they're seeing a greater danger.
Yeah. All right, let's turn to the congressional races in California. Extra layer of importance right now because they could actually influence who wins the House of Representatives. We are going to bring in our special guest now, Scott Shafer, who is down in Southern California. Scott, tell us what you're seeing in terms of congressional races down there.
Yeah, well, Priya, this is really a story of shifting fortunes. If you think back to the June primary, there was a lot of hope in Democratic circles that the party could pick up several seats here in California. In fact, 2 of the 10 most vulnerable House Republicans were thought to be right here. I'm talking about David Valadao in the Central Valley and Mike Garcia in northern LA County. Both of them in districts that Joe Biden did very well, where redistricting had made those districts a little more Democratic, and where the candidates running against them were fairly well known. Rudy Salas in the Central Valley, a Bakersfield native. There was also hope that maybe even the Michelle Steele seat down in Orange County, she's a freshman Republican, that seat could be clawed back to the Democratic column. And even here in Palm Springs, where I am right now, there was some thought that a newly drawn district where Ken Calvert, a 30-year incumbent Republican endorsed by Donald Trump, voted against certifying the election, has a history of anti-gay votes and policies, that he could be vulnerable to Will Rollins, a very progressive, openly gay prosecutor. Now, it's a very different situation. Democrats are playing defense. I mean, you don't really hear them talking about the possibility of picking up those seats. In fact, they're sending out urgent appeals for fundraising for people that you would never have thought would be in a competitive race, talking about Mike Levin down in San Diego, Katie Porter, who has raised $23 million for her campaign, a rising star in the party. She is facing a tough race now against Scott Baugh, former assemblyman, former Orange County party chair. Even Josh Harder in the Bay Area, although he's running in a new district, so he has to introduce himself to a lot of voters. He is thought to be in some trouble. Julia Brownlee down in the Oxnard area in northern LA, Ventura County, she too is facing a challenge. So all of a sudden, you've got all these Democrats who were thought to be, have fairly safe seats where the Democratic registration favors them, where Joe Biden had won these districts. Suddenly, you're getting urgent appeals from the California Democratic Party and from Nancy Pelosi herself saying we have got to defend these seats. And so what it's done is it really has shifted some resources into these races that Democrats thought would be very safely in their column. And so, Priya, I think what we're looking at now is a question, is this going to be a little wave, a big red wave, or a tsunami here in California and across the country? And Democrats are feeling very nervous. They're really playing defense, and it's hard to defend the status quo with the economy being what it is, and they have not done a great job of selling their own message on what they have done to help middle class voters.
Scott, thank you so much. I really appreciate that metaphor. Little wave, bigger wave, tsunami. We don't know
yet, though.
Right.
We'll see, right?
Well, what are you seeing with the? What are you seeing? Thanks, Scott. What are you seeing with the David Valadao race in the Central Valley?
I was down in the Central Valley a few weeks ago, and for sure, I mean, Democrats are on the defensive. Republicans are coming hard, especially over gas prices and oil in that place. But, the only poll that matters is Election Day, as they say. And we'll have to see sort of how this all plays out, if there's a difference between these races, or if it is, as we often see, Congress kind of goes in one fell swoop.
Okay. We have a lot of election coverage planned for Election Day. Joe, tell us how people can listen in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as usual, we have the wonderful Marisa and Scott on 88.5 FM, as well as on our live stream on the website, KQED.org. But we're doing something new, which I'm really excited about. A team too big to thank is behind a new election live blog that we're putting forward. So if you go to KQED.org on election night, you'll see a live, frequently, freshly updating blog with results and reporting from our reporters on the ground.
Great.
It's pretty sweet.
We will be looking for that. Thank you so much, Joe and Marisa.
Thanks, Priya.
All right, now for something completely different. If you are ready for a little break from politics, take a trip with us to visit the bounty and beauty of West Marin. It's tonight's look at something beautiful. West Marin is one of my happy places. I love it. I hope I can get out there maybe this weekend. That is the end of our show for tonight. You can find KQED Newsroom online or on Twitter, or email us at knr@kqed.org. You can always reach me on social media at Priya D. Clemens. Thank you for joining us. We will see you right back here next Friday night. Have a great weekend.